We were 5. Me, Ryan, Josh, Megan, and Claire. Friends since college. We planned this trip for months, 3 nights deep in a forest that was supposedly untouched. No cell signal. Nearest ranger station was 6 miles out. Just us, our tents, and silence. We set up camp near a small creek. It was peaceful. The trees were tall and close but not suffocating. We cracked beers, made a fire, told the usual scary stories. Josh, always the jokester, swore he saw something moving behind Claire while she was peeing. Got a laugh. That first night felt normal. Almost. I thought I heard footsteps outside my tent. Soft, deliberate. Then a twig snapped. Not the light kind either. Thick, like a boot. I froze, listened, but it stopped. Figured it was a deer. Maybe nerves. Morning came. I unzipped my tent and immediately noticed something off. My zipper, stiff. The others emerged one by one, all rubbing their eyes, yawning, and then we all realized every tent had been zipped shut. From the outside. "Who did that?" Megan asked. No one spoke. Ryan assumed it was Josh. Josh swore it wasn't him. We all denied it. Then Claire found the boot prints. A few yards out from camp, looping around us. They weren't ours, bigger, with a distinct sole pattern. Ryan checked our shoes. None matched. Josh's backpack was missing for a while. We found it an hour later, dangling from a low branch like a piñata. Still full. Untouched. It caused a small fight. Josh was convinced we were being messed with. I wasn't so sure. Claire looked pale. Megan wanted to leave. But Ryan, always the leader, said we'd stay one more night and keep watch. We spent the day trying to act normal, swam in the creek, hiked a short trail. We laughed, but not as much. When the sun dipped, the mood dipped harder. That night, Ryan took the first watch. I took second. I must have dozed off. I don't remember falling asleep. I woke to Megan shaking. "Me, did you hear anything?" she asked. I hadn't. She looked scared. Morning came. Every tent zipped shut. Again. This time, worse. Ryan's hunting knife was embedded in a tree, right at eye level. Like someone wanted it to be seen. Boot prints again. This time, closer. Leading into camp, almost touching the tents. We didn't eat. We didn't talk much. We packed up in silence. But when Ryan turned the key in the ignition, nothing happened. Josh popped the hood. Someone had cut the wires, clean. That was the first time I saw Ryan truly rattled. No GPS. Phones dead or useless. Claire started crying. Megan tried to hold it together. Josh tried to act like it was still a prank. No one believed that anymore. We decided to stay one more night, then hike to the ranger station at first light. Ryan and I built a massive fire. We sharpened sticks. We agreed no one sleeps. But of course, people nodded off. I stayed up, poking at the fire, trying to hear past the crackling. Then I heard it. A breath. Not an animal sound. Not wind. Just breath. Slow. Wet. Close. Josh whispered, "Did you see that?" I looked where he was pointing. Nothing. But I felt it. Someone watching. Right at the edge of the light. Then we heard it. A whistle. Just 3 notes. Slow. From the trees. No one replied. No one moved. We made it to morning. No sleep. No conversation. Just surviving. We tried to laugh it off again, but our eyes were red. Faces drawn. We were cracked. That night was the end of pretending. The fire was huge. We sat close, all of us awake, or pretending to be. Megan kept rubbing her eyes. Josh was twitchy. Ryan had the knife gripped tight. Then something flew out of the darkness and landed near the fire. It was a zipper, torn clean off. Claire screamed. Josh bolted, just stood up and ran into the woods. We all jumped up, yelling after him. Ryan wanted to chase him. I held him back. "You'll get lost too." He didn't listen. So it was just me, Megan, and Claire. We huddled by the fire, each holding something sharp. Every sound felt louder, closer. I didn't know if they were circling, or if they were already in the camp with us. Kept the fire going until the sky turned gray. Then we saw him, Josh, sitting under a tree, not far. Like he'd just sat down for a break. He looked dazed, confused. "What happened?" he asked. "Why are you yelling?" He didn't remember a thing. Said he remembered hearing a whistle, then nothing. Back at the camp, we saw it. Boot prints. Everywhere. Not around the tents this time. Between them. Close. Like someone had walked among us while we slept. Ryan came back. He'd lost track of Josh and spent hours looping the woods. He was shaking. He looked different. We got the car running. Ryan had a backup battery pack in his gear. Took some splicing, but it worked. We didn't talk the whole drive back. Not until we hit a gas station on the edge of town. I looked at the photos on my phone. Stupid selfies, campfire shots, trees. Then one caught my eye. A group shot by the fire. We were all smiling. But in the background, behind Claire, there was a figure, barely visible in the trees. Just a shape. Tall. Still. Watching. We planned the hike like we always did. Me, Danny, Becca, and Troy. 3 days in the state park, nothing fancy. Just trees, trail, and time away from everything. Danny had found a shortcut online. Some old hiking forum mentioned a path, not on the official park map. Said it was quieter, prettier, faster. Troy backed him up. Said he'd done it once before. I should have asked more questions. We left the main trail around noon. The new path was narrow and overgrown, but still walkable. At first, it felt like a real find. Dense trees, cool shade, not a soul in sight. No sounds either. No birds, no insects. Just our boots and the occasional snap of a branch. Troy marked trees with red ribbon every so often. "Just in case," he said. We joked about getting lost, but it wasn't funny for long. By late afternoon, the trees felt different, closer, heavier. There was less sunlight coming through, and the ground started to slope in strange ways. Then we found the shack. Old, half collapsed, maybe 8 feet across, roof sagging, a broken door lying flat in the dirt. Danny wanted to look inside. I said no. We moved on. We couldn't find a clearing for camp, so we just set up where we could. Between trees, close together. The next morning, we packed up and tried to find the trail we came in on. It was gone. No path, no ribbon markers, nothing. Troy looked confused. That's when I got worried. He pulled out his compass. It spun slowly, then jittered. He tapped it, shook it. Still spinning. We tried to backtrack anyway, following our best guess. Trees, then more trees. After 3 hours, we found the same shack. This time, the door was back in place. None of us said anything for a while. Becca whispered, "I think we're being followed." I agreed. I'd felt it too. No sounds, no footprints, but something was off. We kept moving. Picked a direction, stuck to it. Hours passed. No sun now, just gray light and silence. That night, we made camp again. Quiet, small fire. Troy barely spoke. Danny was angry. Becca watched the woods. In the morning, there was an orange ribbon tied to a branch near camp. It wasn't ours. It was clean, new. The knot was neat, the kind a ranger might use, but there were no rangers out here. We kept walking. 2 hours later, we found another ribbon. Same height, same knot, same color. That night, Becca's pack was open. Nothing missing, but everything was rearranged. Danny blamed Troy. They fought. Shouting, pushing. Troy finally snapped. Said he lied. He'd never hiked this area before. The forum post didn't mention a shortcut. It talked about a test trail. Something experimental. People said trails disappeared. That markers moved. That someone followed hikers just out of sight. Becca punched him. We were low on food. Water was okay. We agreed to hike in one direction all day. No stops. No breaks. Sometime after noon, we found the shack again. But something was different. Outside the door was a pile of sticks, neatly stacked. On one of them, carved into the wood, Danny. He didn't say a word, just stared at it. We walked, all day, exhausted. Just before sunset, we hit something solid. A metal fence, tall. No signs, no road, just fence, stretching endlessly. We followed it, hours, until we found a gate, rusted, bent, barely hanging. We pushed it open and stepped through. Grass, a dirt road, and finally, cell signal. We didn't talk on the ride home. 3 days later, I went back online, searched the same forum Danny had mentioned. There was a new post. No username, no replies. Found the old fence. New hikers passed through. They lasted 4 days. One saw the shack. Markers were effective. Reset for next group. We were 5. Me, my sister Jenna, Ben, his girlfriend Lena, and Marcus. We'd gone on weekend trips before. This time, we picked a secluded campsite 3 miles off the main trail. No cell service, no noise, just trees and quiet. The first day was great. Warm weather, clear skies. We set up camp by a small stream, cooked dinner over the fire, and sat around telling dumb stories like we always did. The woods felt calm, still. That night, I crawled into my tent early. Jenna shared with me. She fell asleep fast. Around 1 a.m., I woke up. Not sure why at first. Then I heard it. A whistle. 3 notes. Low and slow. Paused. Then again. Same pattern. I sat up, listening. It wasn't wind, it wasn't a bird. It was deliberate. After a few minutes, it stopped. I told myself it was probably nothing and went back to sleep. Next day, I didn't bring it up. Didn't seem worth mentioning. That night, we ate by the fire again. Ben told some story about a guy getting lost in these woods and still being out there, probably eating squirrels and muttering to trees. We laughed. Jenna rolled her eyes. Everyone went to bed by midnight. I stayed up a little longer, watching the fire die down. Then I heard it again. The whistle. Same 3 notes, same rhythm, but closer this time. I looked over. Jenna had her head poked out of the tent. "You hear that?" she whispered. "Yeah," I said. We both listened. It repeated twice, then stopped. Next morning, Jenna brought it up over breakfast. Marcus said it sounded like someone trying to get our attention. Lena brushed it off as a bird. Ben said maybe it was a ranger messing with us. Still, that 3rd night, we were quieter. The whistling started earlier, just past midnight. This time, it moved. Started to our left, paused, then came from the right, then back again, like someone was walking the perimeter, whistling while they moved. Marcus crawled out of his tent. "You hear that?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. Ben and Lena joined us. We sat around the fire, listening. Then it stopped. The next morning, I found footprints near the fire pit, barefoot. Toes splayed, like someone walked through in the night and turned back into the woods. We didn't speak, for a minute. Jenna looked like she wanted to throw up. We decided to set up a perimeter. Hung forks and pots on some branches, like a makeshift alarm system. If something moved too close, we'd hear it. That night, none of us really slept. The whistling started even earlier, around midnight. It moved constantly. Left, right, behind us. Always the same notes. Always that slow rhythm. It never got loud. Just consistent. Calm. At some point, we heard a sharp clink. Metal hitting metal. One of the forks fell. We froze. Ben grabbed a flashlight and shone it toward the sound. Nothing. But Marcus swore he saw something move. Just a shadow, slipping between trees. We sat up the rest of the night, clutching knives, sticks, anything. Morning came. Fog hung low over the trees. Everything felt heavier. Then we saw it. Hanging above the fire pit was a stick figure made from twigs, tied with Fishing line. None of us brought fishing gear. In its center was a small folded piece of paper. We didn't want to touch it, but I did. Unfolded it. 3 music notes drawn in pencil, the same ones from the whistle. No one said a word for a long time. We started packing. We hiked fast, barely talking. We knew the trail. At least we thought we did. 20 minutes in, we passed a tree covered in red moss. I remembered it from the hike in. 40 minutes later, we passed the same tree again. "Didn't we already pass this?" Jenna asked. We all stopped, looked at each other. Ben said we probably just saw one that looked similar. But then it happened again. Same tree, same moss, same broken branch. Someone was moving trail markers, or we were walking in circles. Jenna started crying. Marcus threw up. Lena looked sick. We stopped. I made everyone take a breath. Pulled out the old compass from Lena's bag. It still worked. Pick a direction, follow it. "No turns," I said. No one argued. We hiked for hours, straight. No jokes, no rest, no talking. Then we heard something, distant at first. A low hum, road noise. It got louder, closer. Finally, we broke through the trees, onto a narrow dirt path. The parking lot was just beyond it. Our car was still there. We got in, drove. Nobody spoke until we saw houses again. 2 days later, I checked Jenna's phone. She had taken a video of the fire on the second night. Just a short clip. In the background, almost too quiet to notice, whistling. Faint, but clear. And after the last note, for just a second, you hear something else. A footstep. Crunching leaves, close.